A late-blooming El Nino continues to develop and feed the storm machine. I'm Mark Sponsler, and welcome to the Stormsurf Video Surf Forecast for the week starting Monday, November 27th.
Stormsurf, waves, weather, buoys, altimetry, snow, temperatures, El Nino, weather analysis, essential data for outdoor people, all the time, no hype.
Be sure and like and subscribe. Ring the bell. You get automatic notifications when the videos are posted, typically on Sunday evenings. To subscribe, just click the Stormsurf icon down there in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. Also, if you'd like to make a special contribution, you can. Just hit the heart with the $sign in it down below, and you can make a small donation to the cause. With that, I'd like to thank the folks that donated last week. Coach Nate, thank you very much. Tim Caston, as always. Evolution Moto, thank you so much. Peter Belden, again, good long-time contributor. Our Predicament, and Aiden Runner, thank you so much for your donations. And with that, let's get to work. As usual, we'll start by looking at significant wave heights for the North Pacific Ocean. We see a little gale or some sort of fetch producing 18-foot seas aimed at California. That's good for maybe some wind swell for the next couple of days. We see remnants of a broader system that was over the North Dateline region a couple of days ago. Not really doing a whole lot for producing swell, maybe some background energy into the Hawaiian Islands. But let's start by looking at current conditions. We're going to look at the buoys starting in Northern California, the Point Reyes buoy number 029. We're looking at all the energy that's hitting that buoy, anywhere from up to 33.3 second period, super long period energy. The other end of the graph is 5 second period pure wind chop, and this is the amount of energy hitting each one of these period bands in feet. You can take... there's data that's available. You can look at it in joules, but we just convert it into feet, so it's real easy to sort of spot where all the main energy is. See a little bit of energy out there at 20 seconds, but most energy in the, we'll say, 13 to 16 period range. You take all this, integrate it, put it, and try to figure out the swell. Primary swell, 2.5 feet at 11 seconds from 287 degrees. That seems a bit on the low side. And secondary swell, 1.3 at 19.3 seconds. I'm going to go down here and really dissect this for a second. Yeah, that one reading just looks a little bad. Really, here we go. 4.4 feet at 15.3 seconds, or 5.2 at 14.9. All that, which would put surf in about the 6 to 7 foot range, which is exactly what it was today. Next, we go down to Southern California, the Point Loma South buoy, number 191. Same graph, looking at the energy, just smaller amount, filtered by the Channel Islands. You see a little bump of energy there, but mainly in the 14 to 15 second period range. Primary swell here, 3.1 feet at 14.8 seconds from 275 degrees. That makes surf at about 4.5 feet. That's about right. I mean, there's sets at top spots that are head high or even a bit overhead. Okay, and then that secondary pulse of swell, 1 foot at 19.6 seconds, but it's more of a phantom than a real secondary swell. You can also sort of go here and take a look just for the past couple of days and see what swell heights were. Actually, I meant calculated surf heights. And then finally, we go over to Waimea Bay on Oahu, North Shore buoy number 106. Looking at the energy there, things are fading out. 13 to 14 second period residual swell, fading out from the massive swell that hit a few days ago. And up here we go. Primary swell, 4.1 feet at 12.8 seconds from 329 degrees. That's 5 foot surf, and there's still waves 2 feet overhead at top spots, so that's really Hawaiian. And then some secondary wind swell mixed in there. So let's take a quick look at what's been going on for about the past week. Tuesday, the 21st of November, a gale started building just west of the dateline, quickly went up to 48-foot seas over a small area there, then down to 46 feet as we got into Wednesday, fading from 43 feet. And by Thursday, this thing was fading out with 30-foot seas, still mostly on the dateline. You can see the front here pushing towards the Hawaiian Islands. On Friday morning the swell hit. It was actually past its peak before sunrise at Waimea Bay, but still very large, much larger than expected surf hit the islands from a northwesterly direction, like I think it was 320 to 325. I mean, at one point I think there were buoy readings of 20 at 20 first light at Waimea Bay, but things settled down as we got past about noontime. Swell also hit the Maui and the Jaws area. Winds were pretty strong, though. Trade winds out of the east, not unusual. And then the swell made its way over into California. On Saturday, large surf, at least in the San Francisco Bay Area, 18-foot kind of thing, 18-foot Hawaiian at some top breaks, but just incredible long lines, just groomed to perfection. There were east winds. It was pretty much untouchable everywhere, but the best deep water breaks, and even those were having trouble on occasion with the amount of swell. Long waits on Saturday between sets, but that swell eventually faded, and as we got into Monday, much more reasonable size, much more consistent, rideable, and fun, and more approachable by normal human beings. All right, so here we are as of Monday. Our little gale off the coast with 18-foot seas. And also, I just sort of blew by it here, but there was a little thing that developed on Sunday off of Kamchatka, 23-foot seas. I mean, that's good for maybe some background swell for the Hawaiian Islands, and nothing of any interest really for California. All right, so what is to come? What is the forecast? We're going to start up at Jetstream level, the 250 millibar winds. Now, these winds up at the Jetstream level, about 30,000 feet, help support the formation of gales. When those gales start forming, it helps direct their track. We're looking for a trough, a dip in the jet. If you had a dip, and you can almost see a little dip right there, that would create a counterclockwise flow aloft and down at the ocean surface. That's the hallmark of low pressure. And low pressure, of course, if it's strong enough at the surface, generates winds. Those winds, they get traction on the ocean surface, generate seas. Seas, as they radiate or propagate away from the fetch area, eventually get groomed out. The shorter period elements disappear and dissipate. Longer period elements get exposed, create swell, and swell, when it hits your beach, creates surf. So we don't really have anything at the moment. The jet is almost kind of split, but you notice as we get into Tuesday, it starts consolidating, digging out a trough here north of Hawaii on Tuesday, and even more consolidated as we get into Wednesday. The trough kind of gets all pinched off, but oops, let's go back here, because there is one thing. See that little hook right there? That is a trough as well. So Wednesday, Thursday over the date line, and then fading out. But also notice the jet really isn't split anymore. It pretty much goes the whole way across the Pacific consolidated. This is kind of the thing you want to see during an El Nino year, is see that just happening all the time. I don't know whether we're going to see that, but here we go. As we get into Saturday, another trough starts digging out, being fed by 190 knot winds right there, offering support for gale development. That trough pushing towards the U.S. West Coast, fully getting developed as we get into Monday, and there we are a week out. But energy starting to fade back here to the west. Still potential in the atmosphere to support gale development. Next, we go down to the ocean surface. As of right now, not a whole lot going on. This is surface level pressure, surface level winds. A little tiny gale producing, not even a gale, just low pressure, 30 knot northwest winds. Has to be 35 knots to officially be declared a gale. That gale or even low pressure system just lingers off the coast as we get into Tuesday. Now, a broader system, we know there's a trough forecast here in the dateline region, starts building Tuesday night into Wednesday, 45 knot winds, building to 50 knots in a couple little pockets there. There we go, full on 50 knots, maybe even a little bit more as we get into Wednesday night over the dateline region, fading to 45 knots on Thursday morning and fading from there. But not to be outdone as we get into Friday, another secondary gale spins up off of it with 45 knot east winds, perhaps getting some traction, and yet another little system spins off that with 40 knot northwest winds into Saturday. going to the south. And then I think there is one more forecast. Here we go as we get into Monday, 45, almost 50 knot winds, probably focused more on California than Hawaii. And there we are a week out. Pretty nice fetch of 30 to 35 knot winds, snaking the whole way from the dateline into the Gulf of Alaska, culminating in 45 knot winds in the central part of the Gulf, offering good support for gale development. Let's go take a look at the effect of those winds on the ocean surface. And here we go, significant wave height. So right now, not a whole lot going on. We're really looking for the system on the North Dateline region. Here we go. As of Wednesday night, and that's just 54 hours from now, forecast building to 40 feet, actually 41.2 feet right there, the highest seas over this whole domain. We'll put that in a minute. Building to 42 feet. And to 42.8 feet on Thursday a.m., and that's about it. Then starting to fade from there over the North Dateline region. But that should be enough to push some swell towards Hawaii and the U.S. West Coast. Oh, maybe 2 to 3 days for Hawaii and 4 days or more for the California coast. So we're into pretty much past the weekend. Another gale up in the northern Gulf on Friday produces 30-foot seas over a small area. Another one over the North Dateline region on Saturday with 29-foot seas falling southeast. And then one more for the Gulf. Here we go. That's 180 hours out with 33-foot seas and maybe building a little bit more for 6 hours past that. So lots of potential, none of it like huge, like super long period swell that we've had the past few days. Maybe that's a good thing. A little bit more manageable ocean state and potential swell, but certainly swell is projected. Local wind forecast, all right? Surface level pressure, surface level wind, but zoomed in California right here, Central California, North California, Hawaii down here. As of Monday, well, we all know Monday's gone. Let's just get right to Tuesday. South wind regime finally starts setting up, not particularly strong, but for California. After multiple days of offshore winds and pristine conditions, the party's over there. Trades for the Hawaiian Islands. So we get into Wednesday, though, those trades turn more southerly for the Hawaiian Islands. Local low pressure building north of the islands. South winds again for California. We go to Thursday. Still kind of a south wind mess for Hawaii. And northwest winds, high pressure, leading edge of high pressure, starts pushing into California as the local low moves onshore. Northwest, 15 knots. So we get into Friday, 25 knot northwest winds. Just a mess for California. Something more resembling trades trying to set up for the Hawaiian Islands. Don't think it's going to make it. Northwest winds continue for north and central California, about 15 knots. Lighter wind regime for Hawaii. And then we get into Sunday. High pressure starting to try to push onshore. Northwest winds for Point Conception, south winds for Cape Mendocino, but in between a light wind regime, light trades for the Hawaiian Islands. Then we get into Monday, still light winds for most of California. Northeast winds for the Hawaiian Islands, pretty light. And then there's our big low. Oh, look at that, with 50 knot winds, 55 knot winds. That'd be a full-on storm, and a light wind regime for at least portions of California. Potential for rainfall. With El Nino, the million-dollar question is, where's the rain? It hadn't started yet, though. Why is that? Because this is a late-blooming El Nino. It is taking a while to get going. It stalled out over the summer. It's still building. Most El Ninos have peaked out about this time, at least in terms of what they do in the ocean, and then that sets up the atmosphere to start tapping that energy. This El Nino is still building, and the connection is only deepening with the atmosphere, but it's a little bit behind the usual schedule. So anyway, we see here dry, and we're just looking at California, dry until we get into Wednesday, a little bit of rain along the coast, nothing up into the mountains, nothing penetrating into, Utah or Texas or anywhere like that. The jet stream just isn't supporting it. Another little pulse of rain for Northern California as we get into Thursday night and Friday, and a little dash of snow for the mountains there. Probably not a whole lot. Another little pulse of rain trying to come into Cape Mendocino as we get into Saturday. Backdoor front and some snow for the mountains. The Sierra, Tahoe, maybe down into Yosemite, and maybe Mammoth getting a dusting. Then after that, And pretty much high pressure takes control, pushing everything off to the north. The snow forecast dashboard, and I'm just looking at Squaw Valley or Palisades, Tahoe. That's about 6 inches all on December, well, we'll say the night of November 30th through about the night of December 1st into early on December 2nd. That's it. Not a lot. Freeze level, this is the base of Palisades, Tahoe, about 6,200 feet. This is the summit up there at the top of Granite Chief and the Palisades. You can see, the reds would be liquid precipitation. The blues are deep cold, but the 32-degree line is right here where the gray and the white intersect. So you see freezing above freezing the whole way to the top right now, but below freezing as we get into, oops, you can't see it, there we go, November 30th, and getting snow level down to, or the freeze level down to maybe 3,000 or 3,500 feet around December 1st and 2nd. That's when that snow is supposed to hit, and then we go, boom, right back into another warm spell with the freeze line up at 12,000 feet by December 5th and 6th. Surf forecast, we'll start in Northern California, Ocean Beach. All right, we see decreasing swell as of Monday into Tuesday from the that big storm number 2 that created the massive waves in Hawaii, slowly fading out in California. We just fall into a pure wind swell mess. But then some of the swell starts arriving. This looks like on Saturday, late Saturday into Sunday from the first big system there on the North Dateline region. Surf heights in the 7.5 foot range, so 2 or 3 feet overhead. Swell heights 6 feet, 5 feet at 12 to 13 seconds sort of thing. So rideable surf for later in the weekend if all goes as planned. Looking down San Diego, well, surf heights are already small, 2.5 feet, and slowly fading out as we get into Tuesday and Wednesday. There's some wind swell, but it's just pure junk. And then once we start getting the swell, well, because it's on the North Dateline region, it's probably going to be about 311 degrees relative to San Diego, something like that. So probably not a whole lot of surf. Swell heights in the, well, this is just showing pure wind swell. It doesn't even show any of that longer period swell. So for the most part, a quiet pattern down in Southern California. Then we go to Oahu, North Shore, declining swell from the storm number 2, a little bit of wind swell probably in the mix there, or sideband swell from that little gale that was a few days ago off of Kamchatka, and then larger surf, 9-foot surf as the North Dateline swell starts to show up on Sunday. And here you go, we can get some 3 feet at 14 seconds in the Wednesday, Thursday sort of time frame, that fading off, and then 5.5 feet at 15, 16 seconds from the North Dateline storm. So more swell on the way for pretty much everyone. Southern California, you have to know where to go, find your secret spots, and there will be something rideable. Let's go take a look long term. What's going on with the 2 major oscillations that affect our weather we can see a month out or even up to a year out? That is the MJO, the Madden-Julian Oscillation, and the El Nino Southern Oscillation. First off, we're going to talk about the MJO, the Madden-Julian Oscillation. It's this periodic weather oscillation. It has 2 phases, the active phase and the inactive phase. The MJO rotates around the planet from west to east, the active phase on the equator. The active phase on one side of the planet, inactive phase on the other. They rotate around like that. The active phase is the one we're most interested in. It supports storm development and surf production and weather. It is effectively a low pressure system. As it moves over the West Pacific, it takes warm, moist air, sucks it from down at the ocean surface high into the atmosphere. The jet stream taps that energy, that feeds energy to the jet stream. The jet stream gets stronger, digs out troughs, produces storms, and therefore surf, and in winter months rainfall into California and sometimes across the American continent. Also, The active phase of the MJO dampens trade winds in the West Pacific. When that happens, that allows warm water that's normally pushed over there because of continual east trade winds, allows it to slosh east, not on the ocean surface, but down as a ball of warm water that goes under the equator the whole way across the Pacific, 4,000 miles off to the east. That's known as a Kelvin wave. If you have successive active phases of the MJO, they create successive Kelvin waves, and that can help usher in El Nino. We are in the middle of Kelvin wave number 7, the 7th Kelvin wave of the past year, developing, pushing towards Ecuador. That's on the equator in the far East Pacific, and all part of the developing phase of El Nino. All right, so we're looking for signs of the active phase of the MJO. Remember, I said it dampens trade winds. So this is the TAO buoy array data used for monitoring El Nino. It's a series of buoys strung across the equator. This is the East Pacific here, West Pacific here, equator here. Date line right there. I'm just looking at the arrows. There are wind sensors on the buoys that are part of the TAO buoy array, and the arrows are 5-day average winds from those buoys. So pretty strong east anomalies or east winds over the East Pacific, moderately strong over the Central Pacific, but see that little arrow there and all. There's a bunch of dead data in here, but you can also see basically the trade winds are reversed here on the date line. This is classic El Nino development. Typically, you'd be wanting to see this in more like September, and here we are almost December, and it's just getting itself organized. Again, a late blooming El Nino. It is what it is. There's nothing we can do about that. But anomalies, that's what really matters. The wind anomalies. So, yeah, winds are strong from the east, but this is the difference from normal for this time of year. But you know what? Those strong east winds that's pretty much typical. Maybe a hair bit little stronger right there. But then you're looking at the arrows here, normal. But, whoa, here we go. West anomalies. This is classically what the active phase of the MJO will do. It dampens trade winds that allows warm water. You see this big pile of red right here? That's cooking warm water to start pushing off to the east. So it looks like, at a minimum, the active phase of the MJO is in control, or if not, the El Nino oscillation, the El Nino Southern Oscillation, effectively is a very long-running active phase of the MJO. So one of the two is in effect on the date line, and my guess would be that it's El Nino. Looking real quickly at 850 millibar zonal wind anomalies, this is the same thing as we just saw, just the anomaly part of the wind for the past 5 days. South America, Central America, New Guinea there, the equator right there. The date line right there. The oranges and reds are westerly anomalies. Now, we see piles of westerly anomalies, and it has to be on the equator, right in the Central Pacific. But really, where we want them to be is starting right about here, 125 west on the equator. This is as far west in the Pacific as you can get, right in this area. We call it the Kelvin wave generation area. Now, they were nuking, west anomalies were nuking here a few days ago. Now, east anomalies starting to move in. So this sort of smells like the beginning. Here you go on the 21st, the 22nd, the 23rd of the inactive phase of the MJO moving into the West Pacific, with the active phase moving across the Central Pacific. And you can see that pattern becoming pretty evident over the past 5 days. Let's go look at the forecast. 850 millibar zonal wind anomalies for, what is that? Oh, back about a month out, and then the GFS model giving us its projection for the next 2 weeks. Now you can, and let's get oriented here. Date lines, this is the whole plan on one chart. Date line right here. The oranges and reds are westerly anomalies. The blues are easterly anomalies. You see this just massive easterly anomaly pattern here over the Indian Ocean. And you see this westerly, massively strong westerly wind burst pattern that's been going on pretty much the whole month of November, just about fading out now. So really what a lot of this is typically during El Nino, and specifically the negative phase of the Indian Ocean dipole, all about the same thing. Basically what's happening is wind is falling hard down over, I'll say, the maritime continent, and then splitting on the equator, with part of it moving west. This is the westerly winds pushing over the Pacific, and easterly winds over the maritime continent. very dry air here associated with the easterly winds, but very wet air as these westerly winds move across warm water on the equator over the West Pacific. Westerly wind bursts here. This certainly is fuel for Kelvin wave production if there ever was one. That said, now we're going through a period of easterly anomalies for the next, about the next week. That's it. And then here we go again. Big major westerly wind burst forecast by the usually conservative GFS model. All this looks like classic El Nino kind of pattern. So if the MJO, the active phase of it, is a low pressure system, well, low pressure systems typically suck air up into the atmosphere, warm, moist air. As that hits colder air aloft, it creates clouds. So this is a model of what they call outgoing long wave radiation. Just fancy words for cloud cover, okay? If you have clouds, sunlight can't pass through the clouds, bounce off the ocean surface, and reflect back. So you get negative anomalies, these blues. That would be the active phase, the MJO. The oranges and reds, lots of sunlight bouncing off the ocean surface, meaning lots of cloud-free skies, inactive phase of the MJO. South America, Central America, New Guinea, equator right there, dateline right there. That looks like the inactive phase of the MJO right now, but notice, this is per the statistic model. 5 days from now, that's fading, and we go dead neutral for the day 10 and 15 of the model run. Now, the GFS model says, yeah, pretty much the same thing with perhaps the active phase. You see it here over the maritime continent, starting to seep into the Pacific. Let's dig a little deeper. These are phase diagrams for the two models, just to drill down on each one. What do these show? Well, this is the statistic model. This is the dynamic model. The MJO moves from west to east around the planet on the equator, from the Indian Ocean to the maritime continent, over the West Pacific, over the East Pacific, under the United States, across the Atlantic, back to Africa, and then round and round it goes. So the heavy dot is where the active phase is right now. The further the dot is away from this circle, the stronger it is. So the active phase of the MJO over the Indian Ocean, forecast making it to the maritime continent and inside the circle of death, so it's exceedingly weak 2 weeks from now. The GFS model suggests, well, the active phase may be making it to the West Pacific, but exceedingly weak again. So no major influence, at least according to these models, from the MJO. Upper level moisture, cloud cover, okay? This is a statistic model. The greens are wet areas, the oranges dry areas. So dry would be inactive phase. The oranges, the greens, active phase. So according to this, oh, and there's 8 panels here. South America, Central America, New Guinea there, equator right there, dateline right there. So today, 5 days from now, 10 days from now, this suggests a wet pattern building into about, the 17th of December, but this actually runs about a week ahead of what happens at the surface. So about Christmas, wet pattern in control, and then as we get into January, a drier pattern. So active phase for December, and then maybe inactive phase for January. All right, so let's go look out a month. This is data from the CFS model right here, 850 millibar zonal winds. The oranges and reds, westerly anomalies, the blue, easterly anomalies. The dateline runs, this is the whole planet on one chart. Dateline runs right up the middle of the far West Pacific, about 125 west. Again, you see that Indian Ocean dipole thing with strong, dry east anomalies over the maritime continent. Then you just see pulse, and this is only, like 3 months worth here? September, pulse after pulse after pulse of westerly anomalies, and no sign of the MJO until we got to Halloween. Inactive, the dotted contours, the inactive phase of the MJO. Here we are in November, super strong active phase, enhanced or in sync with the El Nino base state over the dateline region, producing massive westerly anomalies. Here we are today. There's our inactive phase of the MJO. It's building, forecast to push over, but look at that. It makes it not even to the dateline, and westerly anomalies just continue. The El Nino base state in control. And then as we get into, we'll say the beginning of December, here comes the active phase of the MJO, another bout of westerly anomalies going the whole way through Christmas and beyond. This is looking solidly impressive. El Nino in control. Outgoing long wave radiation anomalies. Cloud cover again. We go back a year. Dateline's right up the middle here. That's really where it matters in the Pacific. And then the maritime continent, Bali, that area is right here. So a year ago, we had the oranges are dry air, cloud-free skies over the dateline, high pressure and control, and all the wet air was over the maritime continent. This is classic La Nina pattern. Then we got through the summer, and look where we are now. All that wet air that was over the maritime continent is now over the dateline, and all the dry air that was over the dateline is now over the maritime continent. Classic reversal from strong La Nina to at least building semi-strong El Nino as of right now. Let's go see what the models say. So first off, we'll look up in the atmosphere. This is cloud cover again, outgoing long wave radiation. This is what has happened here in the past. This is what the model is forecasting for the future. There's the dateline right here. Okay, you see the blues are negative anomalies, less sunlight reflecting off the ocean surface, cloud cover building. You see steady building clouds, while the dry air pattern is building over the maritime continent. It has been since, well, whenever July, August, September, October, November. So basically 4 months worth of data here. The forecast goes out 3 more months. Steady building clouds, or basically a steady cloud state over the dateline for the next 3 months into the end of February. Notice the dry air pattern holding, but not maybe quite as strong as we get into later in February. Now let's go down to the surface. This is that easterly westerly wind component again. The westerly winds associated with the active phase of the MJO or a building El Nino base state, all favorable for storm development in the Pacific. So here's the dateline right here. Oranges and reds, westerly anomalies. You see the steadily 1, 2, 3 westerly anomaly pattern. Actually, there's more down here. And now we see right here, and the dateline right here, far west Pacific starts right along here. So here's our little easterly wind event that's going on right now, the inactive phase of the MJO. But then we see steady westerly anomalies, if not strong, as we get the whole way through December. Notice the westerly anomalies starting to ease off some to the east, move to the east, as easterly anomalies, which were confined in this region, starting to work their way into the Pacific, almost making it to the dateline. The westerly anomalies hold steady at, where is that? That's roughly, about 170, maybe 165 west. You really want to see these moving further to the east to get good rainfall into California. All right, so let's overlay the MJO. Now this is kind of weird because we are for sure in the inactive phase of the MJO right now, but the model still kind of says, well, not yet. Anyway, another active phase forecast as we get, a week from now, building and taking over the Kelvin wave generation area into Christmas. Inactive phase after that for a couple of weeks, another active phase, and just this alternating pattern. And then finally, let's overlay the low-pass filter. This is a high-pressure, the El Nino La Nina base state. The solid black contours are low-pressure bias, right where we want it, smack over the dateline, and building with a fourth contour in place and forecast holding for the foreseeable future. Notice the high-pressure bias, the dotted contour here, established over the maritime continent and forecast pretty much holding for the foreseeable future. This is the classic El Nino setup. We've been seeing this for months and months. No change. It's actually developing as forecast. All right, so we've been talking about Kelvin waves. We can actually visualize some of them as they are happening. It requires westerly winds or westerly anomalies blowing on the equatorial West Pacific, all right? And they have to be stronger than normal westerly anomalies. But with right now, we can look at data from the TAO buoy array, that series of buoys strung across the equator. This is the equator here. This is down in the ocean, down 100, 200, 300 meters. These are the actual anchor lines with sensors on those anchor lines going down 300 meters into the ocean, with that data, you can see the passage of warm water, the passage of Kelvin waves pushing west to east. So we have this giant pool of 30 degrees centigrade actual temperatures. That's much warmer than normal water. Sitting here, the leading edge is at about 163 west. That's where it was last week. The 29 degree isotherm at 150 or 151, that's where it was last week. And the 28 degree isotherm, it's moved a little bit. It's about 130 west now. And the 24 degree isotherm, solid the whole way into Ecuador. Lots of warm water in the west, but much more to the east than normal. Normally it's like way off the end of the chart here. Now it's filling the whole central Pacific. Now it's not the actual water temperatures, it is the anomalies, the difference from normal for this time of year. You can clearly see this isn't one Kelvin wave, this is multiple Kelvin waves all stacked up. East Pacific here, West Pacific here. But we had our westerly wind burst that's pretty much been going on continuously from October, creating this giant, just right here, this pile of warm water here, 4-5 degrees above normal, okay? And then we had a separate pool from Kelvin waves 6, 5, 4, and 3 all pooled up here. They're all connected in one giant pile. This is probably, I would say, 3 months worth of warm water all pushing off. That's just for it erupts to the surface here. Then it still would advect or get caught by the trades and push back towards the date line, filling the what they call the Nino 3.4 region. We'll take another look at a chart here in a minute. That's not the surface. But right now, suffice it to say, massive amounts of much warmer than normal water queued up, all bound for Ecuador, all feeding El Nino's development. Now, normally, all this sort of stuff would pretty much be done by now from a normal El Nino year, but because this El Nino's delayed, it's still, I mean, there's piles of backed up warm water. So we'll see what happens as we get into January and February and how much all this warm water really affects the atmosphere. Here's another version of that chart using different technology, not using the sensors on buoys, but using satellite data to measure the height of the ocean surface. We'll just look at the data right now. You can see one big warm pool here, another warm pool here. There's the date line right there. The warm water starts well west of the date line. The leading edge of this is at about 140 west. So this might say the leading edge of Kelvin wave number 7 is more like maybe a month or 5 weeks from erupting over in here. But this warm pool hasn't been moving at all. I mean, you can see fingers of it trying to reach to the surface here. So regardless, lots of warm water, all looking good. Here is the Pentad sea level anomalies, the height of the ocean. They use a satellite, rotates polar orbit around the planet. The Earth rotates underneath it. You take the data from the Jason 3 satellite. You remove the wave heights, the swell heights, even the tides. And is the surface, the sphere of the ocean higher or lower than normal? Why do you care about that? Well, if the sphere of the ocean is higher than normal, like here on the equator, there's the equator, there's the date line, there's Chile, Ecuador, and New Guinea there. You see all these positive anomalies. Warm water at depth expands. When it does that, it will displace the water above it on the ocean surface, creating this signature here. All this is saying is there's a massive amount, 10 centimeter anomalies here, massive amount of warm water in a pocket there, secondary pulse there, and then all sorts of interconnecting warm water, 5 degrees north and south of the equator, right in this area, all Kelvin waves, all pushing off to the east, all feeding El Nino development. And then my favorite chart, upper ocean heat anomalies. This just shows you over time the progression of Kelvin waves across the Pacific. This is the West Pacific here. This is the East Pacific here. December 2022, last year, piles of warm water all piled up in the far West Pacific. Colder than normal water off of Ecuador, La Nina in control. But then right around Christmas time, a little active phase of the MJO pushed a weak little Kelvin wave across. Didn't do much. But Another one happened in January, active phase of the MJO, stronger Kelvin wave. Another one in March, Kelvin wave number 3. Number 4 in April, massive number 5 in May. Then there was a bit of a pause. We got another one in like July or so. And then here's this one starting on October. And it's just, this is number 7, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Number 7, just building solid, looking stronger than any of the previous ones out here south of Hawaii. And the assumption is giving the strength of the westerly anomalies all pushing off to the east. In fact, I've been actually seeing the leading edge of this work its way further east. But at the same time, because there's more westerly anomalies, they just keep coming, the total volume of warm water is expanding off to the west. This is, again, a really good sign for the development of El Nino. So we can have our Kelvin waves, we can have our westerly anomalies, we can have our subsurface warm water, but at the end of the day, you got to have warm water on the ocean surface because that's what creates evaporation. That's what gets caught up in the jet stream, and that's what changes the jet stream pattern. Now, I'm happy to report as of now, easterly anomalies that had been sort of going on over here. Oh, let's get it. We're in Chile, Peru, Ecuador, Central America, Hawaii, and the equator right there. You can see again the beginnings here since easterly anomalies and the inactive phase of the MJO has abated in this area. And in fact, westerly anomalies are all in control over here. Water temperatures getting much warmer again. But what's even more impressive, they're really warm the whole way out to the dateline. They're right in this area. That's the only little weak string in all this, but just qualitatively looking at this, this is a very solid El Nino signal. Late in developing though, and you're going to see why here in a bit. I think this is going to get a lot warmer before it starts getting colder. Most El Ninos peak out somewhere between Thanksgiving and Christmas at the latest. I think based on all the warm water that you saw in the subsurface ocean, that there's months of warm water still to erupt in these pockets, feeding the development of this area. It's going to be interesting to see what a late blooming El Nino does weather-wise. Warm water trend, or the surface water trend for the past 7 days. So again, South America there, Ecuador right there. The official El Nino region, monitoring regions are right here on the equator. We'll get into them in a minute, but you see a pocket of warming here by the Galapagos. Another one out here. This is moderating a little bit. It had this whole area out to the dateline right before Thanksgiving. Not that that's a concern, and I expect that this will continue to warm. It sort of goes in waves and pulses, but in general, looking pretty good. And then here's the backed off view. Okay, the official El Nino monitoring region, they call it the Nino 3.4 region. Well, Nino 1 is right in this area right here. This is sort of where Kelvin waves erupt, so you can sort of get an early clue and see them happening from a temperature trending perspective. Then the trades take the warm water, start dragging it out across here, and you can see persistent warming. Then there's this other warm pocket out here. The official El Nino monitoring region starts here at 120 west, 5 degrees north and south of the equator, out to 170 west, so right in here. So you can see these are not the warmest waters yet. It's warmer over here, it's warmer over here, but you sort of get the sense there's a collision getting ready to happen, and especially knowing there's piles of warm water under this entire region, all pushing off here, making it towards somewhere in this area where it's going to erupt and then get dragged back across the surface. So, a developing El Nino situation continues. Sea surface temperatures in the Nino 1.2 region, that area right there by Ecuador. Temperatures today, plus 1.715 degrees, and this is down. This is really, the CDAS data is off by about 0.2 of a degree. 0.2 of a degree, so it's really almost, let's say, 1.9, almost 2 degrees right here. Steady downward trend. We'll see. I think this is going to go up some more before it's all said and done. But the official El Nino monitoring region, the Nino 3.4 region, again, that region south of California out to almost the dateline. Temperatures up, down just a little bit today, plus 1.519 degrees, but we were up at 1.75 or almost something like that a couple of days ago. looking good. This is the weekly temperature record. This is the Nino 1.2 region. You can see we're up at plus 3.5 degrees at one point in July, and we've been steadily fading. We're down to 2 degrees. This is the anomaly right here. These are the actual temperatures in centigrade. The Nino 3 region, I'm just passing Nino 3.4. This is the official El Nino monitoring region. You see the temperatures slowly working their way up. What is this? Plus 2.1 degrees? That's in super El Nino status. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm kind of yanking your chain. It really is. So the official way to grade it is 0.5 degree above normal is minimal El Nino, but it's got to be for 3 consecutive months. 1 degree is moderate. 1 degree or greater is moderate El Nino. 1.5 degrees, you can see we've been easily in 1.5 degrees since the end of August, end of September. So in almost 3 months now. Is that right? Let me make sure I got this right. August to September to October. Yeah, to November, that'll be 3 months at 1.5 or greater. So that's considered strong El Nino, but 2 degrees is super El Nino. But again, you got to be there for 3 consecutive months. I don't see that happening, but who knows? There is a lot of warm water at depth. But just a little cheer out for a major milestone being passed here. We're above the 2 degree threshold, at least for this week in the Nino 3.4 region. And yet one more way to view the temperature profile on the equator from 5 north to 5 south. Ecuador over here. This is the far west Pacific. Official El Nino monitoring region 120 west out to 170 west. So that'd be about right there. You can see, so this is 1, 2, 3, 4. The 4 degree, that shade of orange is 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 1.5 degrees or higher. That's the strong El Nino. And then this one is the 5th contour right here. And that is the super El Nino contour at 2 degrees or better. Now you see the whole East Pacific full of that, all building out to almost 140 west. Another pocket out here. I mean, we're not that far from connecting these dots and having 2 degrees over the entire Nino 3.4 region. Now it needs to go. Remember, each one of these lines is a month. I think we've actually reached it, so it'd take 1 week intervals, and this is probably running a little bit behind, but I think once they integrate, you're going to see this the whole way across. Now the deal is you want to try to do that for 3 consecutive months. We'll see. That's a tall order to happen this year. So let's do a little historical comparison. Here's our existing El Nino sea surface temperature anomalies. You see the pockets of warming, the big pocket out here, and the almost interconnected flow as of right now. This is as of November 26. Let's go look at, we'll just pull up another year here. All right, so let's go take a look at some other years in comparison. Here is 2015. I'll pull that down so you can see the date there. 2015, at this exact date, 2015 was much stronger than where we are now. And it was super El Nino status. And you could see why because of all the warming here. And I think it did it somewhere around December 15th. It peaked out. Now here's 2009. You can see, and there's the date there just so you can see it. This was in no way comparable. Almost, it looks like a Modoki El Nino. That's when most of the warm water is out here and not pushed up over here. And then finally, the 97 El Nino there, you can see it. Can't even compete. Cooking warm temperatures, as warm and as strong an El Nino as you will ever get. And there is this year's El Nino. So just to compare, this is a strong El Nino comparison using the Nino 3.4 sea surface temperature anomaly centered data. The 82 El Nino, we don't have good images of that, but it peaked at 2.16 degrees in October, the month of October. The 97 El Nino peaked at 2.48, all these super El Ninos, in November. The 2009 El Nino peaked at 1.73 in December. The 2015 peaked at 2.71 in November. Now, here's our 2023 El Nino at only 1.66. All we have is October data so far. We think we're going up from here, but the question is how far and how much. But I think it's going to peak not in October, not in November, not in December. I wouldn't be surprised if it was January or even February at the rate things are going. Looking at the subsurface temperature data and the Kelvin wave setup. Remember that. That's really important. That is a 2 to 3 month lead of what is coming for us. So when I say this is a late blooming El Nino, this kind of tries to drive home that point. The other side is, if the temperatures don't warm till later, in the year, like January, February, well, the peak of winter is in January and February, and if the water temperatures are only 1.7 or 1.8, then that's kind of the El Nino you're going to get for your winter during winter months. Even if temperatures peak out at 2 degrees in March, well, you're already into the decline of winter. It doesn't really make that much difference then. So you really want your warm water to occur during, December-ish time frame, maybe January at the latest, okay? So that the winter pattern has time to act with that warm water and produce storms. We had a stall this year where water temperatures, I was trying to show it in here. I don't know if it really worked out, but the short of it is in like June, July and August, El Nino kind of died, and not died, but it didn't get any stronger. Now it's waking up doing what it should have been doing 2 months ago. All right, what's the atmosphere think is going on? The Southern Oscillation Index, the difference in pressure between Darwin, Australia over the maritime continent, Tahiti in the Pacific Ocean. When Tahiti has lower pressure than Darwin, as you would expect during El Nino, or at least the active phase of the MJO, your daily contribution goes negative. Well, it's not negative today, it's 8.01. It's been positive the past 3 days. But you see, we have been negative, but it's just kind of been in fits and starts. It just doesn't give you that strong El Nino feeling. We do the 30-day average, okay, minus 8.12. This we expect to be down at like minus 25 during a good pulse of the active phase of the MJO as we get into January sometime. So we have quite a ways to go from that. And just looking the past month, we're deeper, but not that deep. And the 90-day average, this is your El Nino, La Nina indicator at minus 10. We want to see this at minus 15. Where have we been? Pretty much unchanged for an entire month. So we need some momentum and energy to really get things going. Here's the 30-day moving SOI graphed out. Here's the zero line. If you're above it, you're in positive territory. This is La Nina. The downward spikes are the active phase of the MJO. The upward spikes, the inactive phase. To be in La Nina, the inactive phases are dominating the active phases. Well, we certainly got off to a good start in January of this year. Massive run of active phases. But then here was that stall that happened in July and pretty much in the month of July. And then we haven't really got any momentum going yet. We want to see this again dropping down into here somewhere. So we're still waiting. A quick look at sea surface currents. You can see moving from, normally trades would be in control and this would all be moving from east to west, but perpetual westerly anomalies has created perpetual westerly current. And it's moving, I think it's moving a little bit, the extent of that to about there. Let's go over to, so here is Ecuador here. Okay, there's your easterly current, and it sort of goes to here, and maybe the two of these meet even somewhere here. That's 155. That's south of Hawaii. Now let's do a little overlay on here. Let's overlay, instead of currents, how about sea surface temperature anomaly? Okay, there's your warm water. There's your little gap right in there, and then there's some big pool out here. Now let's overlay sea surface temperatures. Sea surface temperatures. Whoa, 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 look at that. Massive amounts of warm water here on the move. The leading edge, this is on the surface now, right about there. And then you have your not as warm, but from a temperature anomaly perspective, much warmer than normal pattern there. What right here, you want to see this warm ball moving more off in this direction. I think it's making headway. In fact, the leading edge of it seems to be right about where the dot is here, and that you can't see it, but that's at 162 west, so almost south of Hawaii. Warm pool, this warm pool, because it's so warm, I think I went and calculated out how warm it actually was at one point here, and it was like 87 degrees actual Fahrenheit temperatures. That creates a lot of evaporation. That creates a lot of uplift of warm, moist air in this area. That's near the date line. That feeds the jet stream, and that feeds our storm track. So we want to see this starting to move off to the east. I think we're seeing it, but we'll have to keep tracking it. The official forecast for the Nino 3.4 region, sea surface temperature anomalies from the CFS model. So this shows temperatures up to 1.9 degrees in November. Forecast falling to 1.75 and then up to 1.8 in January, then dropping off from there. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Just seeing all that water that's built up underneath subsurface, whether in mid-January that's it, or whether there's something more beyond that. Now, this is the more liberal version. The more conservative version here says we've reached peak temperatures already. We're going down to 1.6 degrees in December and January, and then falling off a cliff from there. I don't buy that at all. But you know, what do I know? We'll have to see how this all plays out. But for right now, we've had surf. We've had a good long run of swell. It almost feels like winter. It almost feels like that 3 years of La Nina, especially last winter and this past summer, that we're getting past that. I hope you've been getting in the water, but I mean, I start to feel like I'm getting my rhythm back, and it's like, okay, I remember how to surf now. I know how to do all the stuff I need to do in larger surf. Let it keep coming. So we've had storm number 2 already. We have a series of smaller gales forecast over the North Dateline region and around the Gulf. So it looks like more swell is on the way, but we don't have the jet stream just like plowing, just like looking very strong, consolidated, ready to take aim on California. We don't see that happening yet. Seems like we need more warm water. We need the active phase of the MJO. That is scheduled to happen pretty much the whole month of December. So we'll see what comes out of that. I would like to see some more strong storms, and that would set us up for the typical push that happens in January and February associated with El Nino. So we're still in fall. We're still getting ourselves there, but we're not quite as strong as I'd like to see. But I'm thankful, because it is Thanksgiving, or was, for everything that we've had so far, and looking forward to a better future. All right, if you enjoyed the video, give us a thumbs up. Really appreciate it. If you have questions or concerns or comments, just write them up in the comment section. We will reply. If you want to make a small donation, you can. We'd appreciate it. Use the special thanks button down below. And other than that, I think it's time to take a break for a day or two after chasing swells, and then get ready for the next bout of smaller but still fun size surf that's coming our way. And with that, we'll do this again next week, same time, same channel. Thanks for watching.